Hello mathematicians, here is the video for home connections 133 and 134. Number 1, complete the multiplication problems. 3 times 4 is 12, 3 times 3 is 9, 8 times 2 is 16, 6 times 3 is 18, 3 times 8 is 24, 4 times 6 is 24, and 2 times 6 is 12. Number 2, represent each fraction on a bar, then complete each statement with a less than, greater than, or equal to symbol to compare the fractions. Okay, so draw the fraction they tell you to, and then you'll be able to see which one is bigger. So this is a visual way of figuring out which fraction is bigger. You can always make the denominators into the same number as well, and then it's also easy to tell which one is bigger. Okay, so they did the example for us. Letter A, I'm going to draw 3/4 and compare 3/4 to 2/3. And just looking at my picture, I can tell that 3/4 is greater than 2/3. Letter B, 2/8 compared to 1/6. And I can tell that 2/8 is greater than 1/6. Then finally, the last one on the page, 3/4. Compare that to 5/6. 3/4 is less than 5/6. Okay, on to page 134. Use one of the bars below to show a fraction equivalent to 3/4. Use the other bar to show a fraction equivalent to 2/3. Think carefully about which bar you'll use for each fraction. Write an equation beside each bar to show the equivalence. Okay, so let me look at the two denominators. I see a 4 and I see a 3. So our first picture is split up into 12 sections, and our second picture is split up into 8 sections. So if I look at my denominators, you can make a 4 into a 12, and you can make a 4 into an 8. But you can only make a 3 into a 12, and you can't make a 3 into an 8. So there's no way to show 2/3 here, because you can't make a 3 into an 8 by multiplying, at least not easily. So let's see, I think 2/3 needs to be shown in the first one. So in the first one, we're going to show 2/3. And I know that if you quadruple the top and quadruple the bottom, multiply the top by 4 and the bottom by 4, multiply by 4/4, which is really just one whole, you get 8/12. So to show 2/3, it's the same thing as 8/12. And you can see that also if you were to split this picture up into 3 equal chunks, right? Can you see that 2 out of those 3 chunks are shaded? Also the same thing as 8/12. Okay, for the second one, that's where I'm going to show the 3/4, because you can make a 4 into 8. So I'm going to show 3/4 here. And if I double the top and double the bottom, 3/4 is the same thing as 6/8. And I can show 6/8, but if I split it up into 4 sections, I can see that of those 4 sections, 3 out of the 4 are shaded. So 3/4 is the same thing as 6/8. For the challenge, use one of the bars below to show a fraction equivalent to 4/5. So again, I see one denominator is a 5, and then use another bar to show 6/8. The other denominator is an 8. Think carefully about which bar you'll use for each fraction. So the first picture has 4 sections, and the second picture has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sections. Let me look at my 2 denominators that I've circled. You cannot make a 5 into a 4, but you can make a 5 into a 10. So I'm going to show 4/5 down here, because I can make a 5 into 10. If I double the bottom, I got to double the top. Same thing as 8/10. So I'm going to show 4/5 down here. So 4/5 is the same as 8/10. And remember, if I were to split this up into 5 sections, can you see that 4 out of the 5 sections are shaded? 4/5 is the same thing as 8/10. That means I need to show 6/8 on this one. As long as you do the same thing to the numerator as you do to the denominator, you will get an equivalent fraction. In this case, I'm going to cut the top in half and the bottom in half. Divide the numerator by 2 and divide the denominator by 2. 6/8 is the same thing as 3/4. So there's 3/4, and if you cut each section in half, you can see that 3/4 really just is a 6/8 in disguise. They're exactly equivalent. They're exactly the same thing. Letter B. It says draw lines on the bars above to show 6/8 and 4/5. I do not like these particular fractions. I don't like how they wanted you to show it. I think it's confusing. So here's what I would do. I would make these denominators the same. So I'm looking at 8ths and I'm looking at 5ths. And I'm trying to think, what can I make an 8 into? And what can I make a 5 into? What number do they have in common? I'm going to think of some multiples of 8, counting by 8s. And I'm just going to jot them down so you can see 8, 16, 24, 32, 40. And of course, we could keep going. And now I'm going to think of some multiples of 5. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. And of course, I could keep going. And I hope you see what I see, that they have a 40 in common. So I can make them both have a denominator of 40. Once they have the same denominator, it will be ridiculously easy to tell which one is bigger. If you tried to draw a picture of 6/8 and a picture of 4/5, they would look so close that it would be hard to tell, especially if your picture was not perfect. Okay, to make an 8 into 40, I've got to multiply by 5. And if you multiply the denominator by 5, you better multiply the numerator by 5. So 6/8 is the same thing as 30 40ths. And to make 4/5 into, make it have a 40 in the denominator, I need to multiply the bottom by 8. And if I multiply the bottom by 8, I better multiply the top by 8 to get 32 40ths. See how close they are? 30 40ths compared to 32 40ths. So 32 40ths is definitely bigger than 30 40ths. You can also just tell by looking at our pictures up here. If we look here, it's easy to tell which one is bigger. I can tell that 4/5 is bigger, right? That purple looks bigger than that black. So 4/5 is bigger just by looking at the picture. I could look at the picture to tell which fraction is larger. I'm going to add one more thing to this blue and red writing that I did. I just want to write down that 32 40ths is the same thing as 4/5, and that the 30 40ths is the same as 6/8. So either one of those would be fine. Writing this or writing this. Okay? All right, here are the answers to 133 and 134. Okay, kids, I will see you in class.